might get started. Thanks for joining. So I'm Jess from the Resilient Club Support Program at Brisbane Sustainability Agency. So thanks so much for joining us this afternoon for this webinar on grant applications. So this webinar is part of the Resilient Club Support Program. It's an initiative of Brisbane City Council delivered in partnership with our team at Brisbane Sustainability Agency. So for those of you who aren't yet as familiar with the program, it's a free service to invited clubs who lease facilities from council, and basically helps support you on a journey to optimise your club's water and energy usage. So today's webinar is part of a bit of our coaching program. We're kicking off with our first webinar today on grant applications, which has been developed to help your clubs become a bit more grant ready and understand the process behind creating a successful grant application. So the webinar is going to be hosted by Kerri Eckart, who is the CEO and founder of Focus Marketing here in Brisbane. She has a wide range of experience of helping lots of businesses successfully apply to grants. So I'm going to hand over to Kerri now to introduce herself and get started. So thank you, Kerri.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Jessica, and welcome everyone to our presentation this afternoon. I really hope you all get a lot out of it. I am old-fashioned. I really enjoy when we're all in a room together and we can leverage off each other's experience and start to share information. But here we are in this beautiful, beautiful world where technology is what we're utilising. But look, thank you everyone for coming along this afternoon. This session this afternoon was, I guess, generated on the fact that there is obviously a need for your organisations to position yourselves better when a grant opportunity becomes available. I guess the good news is that there are actually grants available, and some are on the horizon as well. So what I'm hoping is at the end of today's session, you have a much better feel for what it is you need to do to position yourself to actually win the money, win the grant, as opposed to putting something forward and maybe being knocked back time and time again. This is a chance to actually go, well, how can I do it better? What are the things that I need to do to make this work? So I'm hoping everyone can see the screen. I've just had someone put a message up saying that they can't hear. Could everyone just maybe as a show of in the chat box, if you are having issues with volume as well, maybe just let me know. Other than Carolyn, thanks for letting us know, Carolyn. Look, as I'm talking today as well, please feel free to pop any questions that you have in the chat box function. If you've not used Teams before, hopefully you have. There's a little bubble in the top right-hand corner. If you click on that, a little chat box will come up on the right-hand side. You can type right into that, and then eventually that information towards the end of today's presentation, we'll go through all the questions that you may have. So let's get into it. A little bit about me. I won't go on too much. You can obviously read it there, but feel free to connect with me. My background, I've been working in a grant submission, tender and marketing space for about 25 years now. So a lot of what I'm presenting to you today is based on that experience. I've worked on projects that are worth the billions of dollars all the way down to projects that are $20,000. So the good news is that everything I have learned over the years can be scaled up and down according to the size of what it is that you're actually pitching for. Okay, let's get stuck into it. So what are we going to be looking at this afternoon? We only have a short amount of time to go through quite a substantial amount of information. So I will do my best to keep on time. And as I said, if you do have some specific questions, if I've glanced over something a little bit too quickly, just write it in the chat box and we'll hopefully pick up on that later. If we run out of time this afternoon, there's always an opportunity that I can follow up with you potentially after that and respond to it. So what we're looking at is, why is the grant in existence? What is it that you need to look at? Well, how to interpret it? Then we're going to have a look at the structure of the grant. So once you understand why the grant is in existence, how do you actually structure a response? And then what are the things that you need to avoid, and what are the things that you have to have included? So, all right. First things first. It sounds really obvious, but The thing is with a grant, it is an opportunity to obviously be given a sum of money, irrespective of that size. Sometimes they can be $1,000. Sometimes they can be, $200,000. They vary in size and range, and they obviously vary in why the grant has come into existence. The first thing that you absolutely 100% have to understand is why the grant is available. You've got to start to look beyond what is in existence, in the sense of, if there is a grant out there, who's put it out there? What is going on in the background? What is it that they want you to be pitching for to make them effectively fulfill their requirements and objectives? People just don't give money away without something in return. So if it's a grant that's coming out from the Brisbane City Council, they generally align it to a program, or they align it to a vision. You've actually got to understand what it is that they're trying to achieve, and then you've got to then go, how can I help them to achieve that? If they were to give me that sum of money, what are the things that would make what I'm wanting to do with my club look good for them? Hopefully that's making sense. Um, the next thing you have to do is that when you receive a grant, and I'll just take one tiny step back in the hope that everyone on the call, we've got quite a variety of individuals on this seminar this afternoon, coming from a range of different backgrounds. And I appreciate that some of you may have worked and put a grant application in before, and some of you have never. Some of you might be like, I don't even know what a grant is. So effectively, a grant is an opportunity to complete an application to receive a sum of funds. Within that grant application, there will be questions that they're asking, and you have to fulfill a certain criteria. So when you do receive that, the first thing that I always do is, I actually, once I understand why it's come out, it's important to have that conversation with people other than just myself. There normally is a couple of people that we can debate why something is in existence. I will actually look through the physical questions and start to go, well, what is it that they're asking, and why are they asking it? And how do we fulfill on the questions that they're asking? What are the things that we've got to answer those questions clearly and succinctly, so that they fully appreciate why we're actually asking for these funds? The other thing that you want to do, and this comes back to this is all to do with the why. If you can appreciate what their challenges are that they're having within their current environment, or what are the opportunities that they're having within their current environment, you start to peel back the things that they'd be looking for. So it's really important to understand that there's the people that are releasing the grant, there's you, there's a pot of money, and somewhere in the middle, their ideas have to mesh with your ideas to actually receive that funding. So the more that you understand about their challenges and their opportunities and their aspirations and the things that are going on, the more that you can start to appreciate, well, this is what we want over here. How can I, you know, word this in a way that it meets and the criteria that they're looking for? And that then really fits in with a project objective. So there's always criteria around every specific grant. They're all independent, they're all different, they're all structured slightly differently, but there'll be some objectives. And what are those objectives? What are they trying to achieve? And again, this is what you want the money for. This is what their objectives are. How do you actually talk to those things to present a case that is warranting them providing you with that funding? If they're wanting this and you're talking about something over here that doesn't talk to what they need, then why would they be giving you those funds? That would that you've got to make life easy for them. They're reading through, as we all know at the moment, there's been a lot of grants of late that have come out, and within hours, the funds have gone. Um, eh, we're living in a world at the minute where people need that funding, so they're hot when they do get released, and they go really quickly. So the more research that you can do, the more depth of understanding, the more you can tailor your application to what the needs are, the higher the probability will be that you will actually receive that funding. If you're lucky, and it's incredibly helpful if they actually give you some criteria of what it is that they're looking for, and even better if they actually put a percentage against the criteria so that they're clues. If they have, I don't know, just going to make something up. If it was about your people and the criteria was, say, 50%, and then the technical response was 10%, you could start to see where their area of focus is. So you can adjust again where you place your emphasis according to what it is that they've put out there from an evaluation criteria perspective. And it's really helpful if you also know who is going through the grant application and effectively saying yes or no. Um, what is it that they've got a job to do? Um, Heaven forbid the amount of grants that come through at any one time that you want to capture their attention. But what are the things that they're trying to achieve within their role and their job? And kind of put yourself into that mindset. So what I wanted to do briefly, because we can't spend a lot of time looking at this, but what I really wanted to achieve is just having a look. And I'm hoping you can now see there should be another screen up that is showing you a website. Someone tell me if you can't see that, but it's basically there's a couple of grants that are on the horizon that actually fit quite perfectly, and you may have already been aware that they're coming out, but they are perfect for the organisations from which you come from. One is the community support category, and the other one is the community facility category. So what I basically wanted to do was to just show you um, a live grant and what that would look like from a response perspective. What are the things that you're actually looking for? So just bear with me. I apologize. Just while I'm swapping screens, I'm just going to turn one off. Talk amongst yourselves. Won't be a second. Okay. So hopefully that is now bringing up um, another screen, which is basically the grant that is becoming available for this one in particular is the Lord Mayor's Better Suburbs Grant. And when you open them, they should provide you with all the information that you need in order to successfully complete these grant applications. So we just talked about this. So look what they've got here. They've clearly outlined what the objectives are for this grant. So take the time to read through them and clearly understand what it is that they're asking for and what those objectives are. Now, the first line here is alluding to the fact that they want to deliver outcomes in alignment with Brisbane Vision 2031. If you don't know what Brisbane Vision 2031 is, go and find out. They're very gracious in that they, throughout this document, have provided links. You just need to click on the link and educate yourself. It would be incredibly remiss if you didn't bother to look at that. You just continue to read the objectives. You'll have a disconnect from what it is that they're actually wanting to see when they receive these grant applications. So I can't stress to you enough that you have to read everything that they provide you. Just as another aside, whenever I get a grant or tender or any of these sorts of documents where you have to provide responses, go through these documents and mark it up. I always read them 3 times. The first time I read them for an understanding. The second time I actually go through with my highlighter and pull out the bits that are super, super important. And the third time I sit there with my pen and start to go, right, I could see that we need this, I can see that we need this, and I'm starting to map out what it actually looks like. But I find on the third read, they sort of cement in your mind, they start to make sense. And you absolutely can trust what it is that they're looking for. Um, they've been really clear and articulate in this one in saying, look, these are the priorities. This is when the applications will be released and when they'll be completed. What are the eligibility? If you're not eligible, you're wasting your time. They're not, there's no, oh, maybe. It's a yes or no. If you're not sure if you're eligible or not, there's always a phone number. That site that I just went to has a telephone number on there. If I was in doubt as to whether what I was wanting to pitch for was relevant for this one or because there's another one, was I eligible because I wasn't quite sure, I was interpreting the language in 2 ways, just give them a call. That's their job, to help you to get through this process. So I would just get on the phone and say, look, I'm a little confused. I've read it 3 times. I'm not 100% sure. Could you just tell me X, Y, and Z? They're telling you what's it, you're ineligible. They're telling you what can be funded. They're very specific. So again, they're telling you why this is in existence. So you've got to read through this and you've got to understand it. What the types of funding are from an availability perspective, what that looks like, how they'll pay you when you're successful. And look here, we've got, and look, hopefully you can see this. I might just enlarge it so in the pen, is that they've been really kind with this one to give some assessment criteria. So the expectation is that you would provide a response to all 5 of these main headings. And let's pretend that it's 10 pages and you're like, I'm going to put in 10 pages, and you can see the weighting. So you'd go, I'll put 2.5 pages of copy against that one, 2.5 pages of copy against that one, 1.5 for that, 2 for that, 1.5 for that, because that's kind of the weighting. It's not a hard and fast rule, but it can really help you. These are all quite similar, but if you've got one worth 50% and one worth 10%, you're going to spend more time on the 50% than you are on the 10%. But just be aware that they sit there with a sheet of paper and they're giving you a mark out of 25 for that first one. They're giving you a mark out of 25 for the second one. So that is the process in which they'd go through. So that's really helpful. They've given all of that. They're telling you how the application will be processed and whether if you're successful or unsuccessful, what that would look like. Look, we've got an inquiries line here. So you've got everything that you could possibly need. They've explained what some of their verbiage means. They've been really good in providing some valuable information there. So going back to what I had suggested originally, it is one of those things where the more you know, the better prepared you can be, and the more tailored you can be in that physical response. Just sorry, bear with me while I get us back to the presentation. No, doesn't want to play. Okay, hopefully that's back on screen. So just remember all of those things that I've said there. Don't underestimate any of that. The more work you do as a group, and even it's really hard to do these things on your own, just sit and brainstorm them as a group. so that you're all on the same page and you are all in agreement what it is that they're asking, so that you can then go, we need the funds for this. How does that align? How do we now to, do the merging together? Um, what makes a winning grant? These are just some of those elements, but if one of the expectation is that you are coming from a club that is that you're a well-oiled machine, that things are working, that things are happening, that you're up to whatever it is that you're pitching for. You've got some sort of recent relevant experience in this area. You've got a team that works well together, and you prove that you can deliver. So you might be able to say, look, we've received funding a few years ago and we achieved this, and this helped us to achieve this, and we want to keep moving forward. Um, is an incredibly beneficial way of pitching again. Having some positive relationships in, if you're pitching for one of these grants that I just showed you, if there was something that had happened in the past, then, if there was any bad press or anything like that, you don't just brush over it. You've got to make sure that everything around the club is deemed positive. Um, this one is really important. The walking a mile in the client's shoes is that analysis piece of, there's money, why is there a pot of money, and how do I see everything from their perspective to enable me to pitch to suit their needs. It's about you, but it's actually about them. And I know that's sometimes a weird thing to get your head around. You have a need, but their need has the money. So how do you make that come together? And there's a sweet spot sometimes, generally in the middle. The biggest thing with um, achieving all of this is that they've got to see that there's a positive return on their investment. Nothing comes for free. So let's just presume that you're asking for $10,000 for a project within the club, that they want to be able to go, okay, I can see why you're asking for it, because there's a clear path in this funding will enable you to do X, which will help you to achieve Y, which will increase the value, which will help with patronage, which will help with blah, 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 blah. So it's just not about, oh, yeah, to just be really good. And, we don't really know, we'll maybe do this, but we don't really know why or what the impact of that will be. It's got to be strategic. They want their community to do well, and they want the clubs to do well. They don't want to be giving money to somewhere that it gets swallowed up and there's no positive outcome, because it's obviously not the reason for the grant, and it actually makes them look bad as well. If someone was to ask about, well, how did that go? Um, so as I said, read through the grant application, understand why it exists, brainstorm it together so that you've got a collective view of what it is, um, and and then whatever the reason is for the money, work out a way to formulate that gels with what their needs are. Again, these things are easier to do together. Otherwise, it just becomes one person's view. But the other thing with a grant, and I see it a lot of the time, where people get excited that there's money available and they just start making stuff up on the fly. Oh, we need this, we need this, we need this. Because the grants are getting going like super, super quickly, you're already in a disadvantage, because there'll be people who've actually sat down and gone, what does our club need? What is it that would make our club perform better, achieve more, whatever those things are that we're looking for? What are those things? And then if a grant was to become available, and if we were to be able to tap into funds, this is what we would want to do. So you're starting to then see and have an opportunity to go, yep, this is the perfect fund grant for us, because we know that it will help us to achieve X, and that's part of what it is that we're trying to do as an organisation. Couple of things when you are doing your physical response is just be really clear in how you're structuring your answer. So that example that we just looked at, it had 5 questions. You might do an introductory piece, whether it be an executive summary, an overview of what it is that you're looking for. And then you should really have each of those 5 questions a specific section of verbiage and information that you're responding to. Keep it simple. It's really important to appreciate just how many of these applications are coming through. And the best thing that you can do is, in addition to those things I've just spoken about, give it to a peer that maybe doesn't know everything about you, that you trust, that could give you some some constructive feedback, where you could say to them, look, this is this is what they're looking for, and this is what we're pitching. What do you think? And if there's anything in there that they don't understand, there's a really high probability that the evaluators won't understand it either. So it's got to be simple language. It's got to be something that they get. It has to be something that it gels with them. They completely understand it quite quickly. If they're left guessing, or there's a disconnect, or something just doesn't ring true, then they probably, they're finding, again, if there's loads and loads of applications, they're finding basically reasons not to give you the money. So don't give them reasons. Give them reasons to give that funding to you. Just be, aware of your detail and the depth of the information that you're giving. It's dependent, obviously, if you're pitching, is there a difference between pitching for $5,000 to $500,000? Yeah, there is. You're probably going to want to give more information in the bigger one. So weigh those things up. The key messaging is the really good thing that you can do at the very outset. So once you've analysed what they've asked for and why they've asked for it, and who it's been given to, and what their objectives are, you might just have, say, 3 to 5 key messages that can become basically an executive summary, that you go, this is why we're asking for it, this is what we'll bring to the club, and this is, what it will help with, the wherever the grant's coming from. This will help you to achieve those objectives, etc., etc. So there might just be 3 to 5 things that you're really punchy, that you want to say again and again and again, to really hone in on why you. You're giving them the why you, and it helps them then to articulate why they've picked you. If it's kind of a bit, they kind of said this and then they said this, and I'm really not sure. Is the money going there? Is the money going there? The clearer you are, the easier their life will be. Give proof. So if you're expressing something, and whether it be, and this is just my example tonight, is to say, as we received funding, I don't know, 10 years ago, and it helped to achieve XYZ, which helps us to do blah blah blah. Actually provide that proof. You might also have uh, statistics, numbers of people, whatever that looks like. You might have things like testimonials from people to say how amazing you are. Whatever that is, we can all write anything, we can all say anything. So back it up with some actual physical proof, and it will go a really, really long way. It just gives that depth of credibility, and they trust what it is that you're saying. Just keep things really clear and clean. Sometimes the applications are in portals where you're word limited and you've got to fill things in. Where you are given an opportunity to provide back a document, make it look good. I mean, these poor people are sitting there reading through all these documents. Try and make their life easy. Help them by a really nice, clean, clear layout that shows them what it is that you're talking. Pictures say 1,000 words. Maybe you take a few pictures or whatever that is. Help them. This is going to make life really easy for them. If there's page limits, just obviously stick to them. There is a rule, regardless. It doesn't matter how well you know someone, they can't dismiss the rule. If they say 10 pages and you submit 12, they'll either say that you haven't adhered to the rules, and they might throw your application out, or what they'll do is they'll take the first 10 pages and then they'll chuck the remaining. And that is a rule across the board. No one can get away with it. Um, Keep it short and succinct, coming back to again, just making their lives simple. Find someone to provide feedback, but also proofread. I can't proofread my own work, particularly if I've spent hours and hours on it. I I see what I think I wrote. I can't see what I've actually written. So actually get someone to proofread. If you're really light on with people, which I appreciate is potentially the case, I have been known to turn on in Word the little, I can't remember what it is off the top of my head now, but it talks to you. If I've been writing and rewriting something 100 times and no one's around, it talks to me and I'm like, oh, that doesn't make sense. So that can be a really good tool as well. So things to avoid that really annoy people is that compliance issue. If they've said something about compliance and you've disregarded it, that'll get them off on the wrong foot, and it's not a great way to start a relationship. uh, just be really respectful of if there's some rules and processes and about the evaluators. uh, just we all want to do the right thing and no one wants to be seen to being favored, etc., etc. So just be aware of what those rules are. If there doesn't appear to be such, as rules as such, then do research, find more information, ask questions. And particularly if there's no kind of lockdown scenario where you can't talk to certain people once something becomes live, just ask lots of questions and information. The more knowledge is that thing we all know, the more we know, the better it is, the more we can tailor. Um, don't go giving them something that doesn't answer the questions and is just what we call boilerplate, where they're like, oh, yeah, this came from a brochure or it's come out of their website. It's got nothing to do with what it is that, we're providing funds for. It's not cool. They'll be looking for what it is that you're asking for, and if they can't find it, you won't get the money. The brochure's the same thing. They don't want it. Uh, Not answering the questions, which we just said. If you go, oh, it'd be better if I just moved all of the questions around, it would make more sense. And I think it would work better this way. You're now forcing them with their checklist to go and find the answers to the question. We call that hide and seek. You will lose points. If they can be bothered to find them, you'll get a couple of points, but you'll lose. And going back to that, where we were talking a little bit before about page limits not being adhered to. So a couple of things that I think are incredibly important when it comes to pitching for a grant. It's a team effort. They're really, as I said earlier, they're really hard to do in isolation. They're incredibly challenging. If you're kind of sitting there going, oh, how do I word this? If you can brainstorm it and work together, it doesn't have to be a huge team. Two is better than one. And really be clear, even that step before, if from a strategic perspective, you all know what it is that the club needs. Um, and then you can hone in really when those grants are going to be available. Try and do it as a team and assign people with specific roles, appreciating that a lot of people are volunteers. So more hands, the better. But as long as everyone who is involved does what they say they're going to do within the time that they've agreed to do it, these are things that are time bound. So it's just really important to get the right people at the table to achieve what needs to be achieved. And the good news is, I think, whenever you put an application in, you've actually now got some information to leverage off and to repurpose. And that's fantastic. It's really hard when you do your first one because you're like, oh, haven't got anything to work with here. Okay, this is interesting. Excellent. So if you've actually got some quality information, what should happen is that you can leverage off that for the next one and leverage again. And you should continue to evolve in that process as well. And that's where you become, more efficient, more effective, and ultimately you should be getting more grants. So above all is that this is always a sales pitch. You might not think it is, but it is. You are pitching to people for their money. So this, if as soon as that kind of, I guess, penny drops, everything else should become easier. They're not just throwing their money away; they're giving it away for a specific reason. So you, within, as I keep going, there's what they want, there's what you want, and then there's the bit in the middle. And then there's pitching. So it's about them, but you're asking for something. And it's trying to mesh those things all in together, so that again, you get the funds. Um, Now, there's a couple of things. There's obviously a lot of grants out at the moment, and that one we just looked at a little while ago, quite briefly, is out very, very soon. So that might actually be something that you might want to have a little look at and get your ducks in a row. They've already told you everything that they're looking for. There's no reason you can't actually have it ready to go so that when it does come out, you can submit on day one. And again, we all know that grants have been flying off the shelf. Once the money's gone, the money's gone. That is, it is, it's not infinite. It is what it is. So I would suggest at the moment you've got to get moving. You can't hum and ha. If you're going to go for it, you've got to go for it sooner rather than later and have these conversations sooner rather than later. Otherwise, if you leave it to the last minute, you will miss out. So that fourth one is, just a link to the website that we were looking at earlier. And the good news is with a lot of wherever the grants are coming from, they want you to get the money. They want to help you. They have people on hotlines where their job is not only to assess the grants, but to help you in understanding how to pitch. I've run some of the numbers before, and I've been in the game for a really long time, and I've just gone, look, we were thinking of, we're looking at it from this perspective, and then we were looking at it from this perspective. Could you maybe give me your, what do you think might work the best and why? And that will tell you. They're quite happy to have those conversations. The third one there, they've actually got a whole heap of information on this specific website, which really actually is very similar to the information that I've shared with you already tonight about, some tips and what those tips are. And they're, again, it's for this particular one, it's catering for this particular, it's for the, Queensland government for Brisbane, the Lord Mayor's grant. So all the information is specifically catered. So the tips they're giving you are massive hints. Um, Personally, I would read that and maybe understand what their hints are. So they're from the, I guess, the perspective of, presenting, information to you tonight. I didn't want to overwhelm with a whole heap of processes and systems, et cetera. But I think what is really important is to just have a system in place for, who's looking for the grants, knowing what the club needs from a strategic perspective, then who is involved in actually working out what it is that you're looking for and actually writing. There's different skill sets in amongst all of that. But it is a project, and it does require someone to manage the project and have ownership of the project. Doesn't mean to say that's the person that has to do everything, but it is important to have a system in place so that it doesn't get bounced around and then the opportunity is completely lost, and then there's that, I guess, the regret that comes with that. So I hope that there's, some new information there from the perspective, if you haven't worked with a grant, or even if you have worked in a, put together a grant application before, that I'm really hoping that there's information there that you would find of benefit, that you could hopefully put back into place within, the organisation that you're with as quickly as possible to, effectively, there's money on offer at the minute. Wow, go for it. It's awesome that there is that, availability of funding. It's just about writing it in a way that meets the objectives of whoever the organisation is that's handing out that funding. So that's the end of my formal presentation. Again, I hope you've all got something out of it. I would love if anyone has any questions they would like to ask. There might be something they'd like to know more about or anything that I haven't covered. Feel free to pop that into either the chat box on the side, or you can raise your hand. It's completely up to you. Was there any questions that you were aware of that have come through earlier, Jess?
No, I haven't seen any in the chat, Kerri. So if anyone wants to, yeah, raise their hand or pop one in now, we can get through those.
Stunned silence. Hopefully I haven't completely overwhelmed you. While we're waiting, obviously those couple of grants that I looked at earlier are hot and ready to go. So I would really encourage everyone to, at the bare minimum, jump on and investigate them if you can tonight, and see if that is something that would be suitable for your club and what they're potentially looking for in the months to come. So some really great opportunity, and that injection of funds back into that sort of grassroots level is fantastic. What are the names of the grants, as I have no pictures here? I'll pop them into the chat box. What I'll do.
So the name of that council grant is the Lord Mayor's Better Suburbs Grants. And that information's online. We can send out an email with the details.
And for some reason, I can't write into the chat box. Okay, so I'm sure Jess will send that information out with the link to that as well. And Jenny's just asked any other organisations that I could suggest other than council. Look, what you can actually do in the wonderful world of technology and Google, all you have to do is actually do searches these days, and Queensland government has quite a lot of grants on offer. So they come and go. That's, I guess, the challenge at the moment is there might be something you're like, damn, if I'd only known about that, we could have applied for it. It was, I don't know, say technology, and we could have done with some updating of whatever that thing is. So just run your searches, and generally you can actually, Queensland government, there are quite a few, but what I'll do is with Jess provide some other places that you could have a look at, and maybe that could be sent out by email, Jess.
Yeah, definitely. I can collate some and put them together in an email next week.
Okay, awesome. And excuse my ignorance, and I'm so sorry, Jess. Are the mailing lists for grants do you have any that come out through your organisation?
We do look for opportunities, and we'll definitely, through this program, we'll have them available for clubs, and we'll share that information if we become aware of any that would be suitable. So as part of the program, each club will get an action plan of different things they can implement for their water and energy use, but we also have a section at the bottom with any current grant opportunities that might be available. And we're also looking at having some resources on a web page in the future that will help clubs with that too.
Amazing. And look, there's always new ones popping up as well, and I'm sure that Jess will do an amazing job of collecting the main ones. But every so often there's others that become available. So Google Alerts is a great way to see if anything new comes up, and just, yeah, running some of your own searches, I think, is really important. And then hopefully you've also got that networking amongst the clubs as well, where you might actually share information. Tony, you're being ever so patient there. Tony, did you want to ask a question? Tony, you may still be on mute. Okay, Tony, unfortunately, we can't hear you. I'll try and throw to Bronte.
Yep. Hey, Kerri. I was just going to say, just in terms of trying to find out what opportunities are around, yes, through the program, we'll try to keep clubs in the loop. But another really good resource is the funding. It's called the Funding Centre, I think, and you can get a kind of yearly subscription. It's aimed at not-for-profits, basically, and I think it's about, I don't know, $170 a year or so for a subscription, and you can set up your own notifications. So that's just something to think about and have a look at as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that, Bronte. That is awesome. I'm just having a little look here. Do we have any major grants as of now for infrastructure development? We'll Google too. Well done. Um, the ones that we were just looking at before have actually got some development opportunities in that. So definitely have a look at those. And I'm sure there will be others coming up in the future as well. So I personally am, and I'll put my hand up and say I am not aware of every single grant that's available for every single industry. But I have a general feel for what grants are out there because they do come and go quite quickly. So that's why it's really important that if Jess can send out some linkages for everyone, that will be incredibly helpful. And I believe Jess has been recording the presentation. Jess, where will people be able to find the presentation to get a copy?
Yeah, so as Kerri said, we've been recording it. So I'll send that file. And Kerri, if you're happy to share your presentation, I can send an email to everyone who's attended today, both of those links. And if you have any questions for us, you can also get in touch with us at the same email that the webinar invitation came from. So that email address is resilientclubs@sustainablebrisbane.com.au. But we'll make sure to send out all the information to everyone who's here today.
That'd be fantastic. Thanks so much for that, Jess. Tony, thank you. There's a page for someone that you can look at that has a list of grants that are open. Just be really careful. And I know it's really fabulous when people do that. It doesn't mean there's everything on there because it actually takes a lot of work sometimes for people to find that information. So I really strongly encourage people to actually continue to do their own research as well. And that might be a fabulous starting point from a collective perspective, but there might be other stuff that's in existence that maybe hasn't made it onto that page as well. Lisa has written, how do we know what Brisbane City Council need in terms of approvals for infrastructure on community lease sites before we submit an application? I don't know the answer to that question. I just don't know, Lisa, I don't know the context and what that is, to be completely honest with you. It would require research. It would require asking questions. It would, you would probably find that information will be in a document somewhere. So
I can answer that question.
Oh, perfect.
Sorry, it's Michael Smith here from Brisbane City Council. So
Excellent.
Probably one of the key changes to our grants this year is there is actually funding, the opportunity to apply for funding for all of those additional approvals before you submit your application for the actual project itself, if that makes sense. So you can separate it into two parts because we're really, really conscious of clubs not having lots of money to go and do the necessary investigations, but those investigations, when they are done, identify additional costs, which if you've already asked for $200,000 from us and maybe some money from a federal or state politician, and all of a sudden you guys find out you need another $100,000 or $200,000, generally nobody's got that money. So we're really trying to educate clubs, I guess, to take their time and look at applying for. So if you're on a council lease site, you'll have to put in an application for works for your project. And when you put in that application for works, and if you have a chat to your local sport and rec officer. They'll be able to give you guidance on what sort of approvals you'll need, and certainly that the application for works support letter will tell you what sort of approvals you'll need to get. So you can actually, and given that these grants are open twice in a year as opposed to previously they were once in a year, they can, you can, it's, I guess the pressure is off somewhat, in that if you're not ready for this first round, you don't have to run around like a headless chook and, you know, use your time unwisely. You can slow down a little bit and go for the ones that open just after Christmas. So that would be my advice, is to have a chat to your local sport and rec officer and understand where you are in the planning of your project and what you need to actually apply for in as the first step in this grant application process.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that information, Michael. Perfect. Lisa's just saying thank you as well. Are there any more questions before I throw back to Jessica to close out for this afternoon? I'll just give it a couple of seconds. No. Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Hi, I'm so sorry. I can hardly hear you though.
Oh, because Tony's busy. It's Michael from Chermside Bowls Club. I was the one who said about the Stephen Bennett, the MLA. It's wonderful. It's about, could be 40 different grants all over Australia. It shows you what is open.
Amazing.
Each Monday night we've been doing the Terry Dillon solutions that have been now changed to Club Map, and it goes for over 12 weeks. So if people look up Terry Dillon Solutions, and I think they've now changed the name to Club Map, it shows you how you should have a structure for your club, your finances, governance. He used to be the Chief Financial Officer for Collingwood and everything. It's well worth it. So people should have a look at Terry Dillon Solutions or Club Map. It comes out of Victoria. It's 6 o'clock, and we did the last one this week, but it's very, very good.
Amazing. Is that a link that you could either send to Jess or even pop into the chat box on the right-hand side as well, just to help people locate it?
I'm not really good on this, am I?
That's okay. That's okay. Jess, I'm wondering if you could just follow up with that and grab the information if you can't find it through Google or something, and add that into whatever the...
If Jess sends the email here to Chermside Bowls Club, then Tony will send it to me, and then I'll send Terry Dillon's link.
Excellent.
Because it is very, very good, because he gives you great ideas of how a club should be structured and what you can do.
Fantastic. That sounds like a very valuable piece of information. That is awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you. Jess, I'll throw back over to you now.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Kerri. And thanks so much for taking the time to share your knowledge today. I'm sure many of our clubs will have some valuable takeaways that they'll be able to use, especially for those upcoming grants. So if you want to get in touch with Kerri at Focus Marketing, you can find their contact details on their website, which is focusmarketing.com.au. And thank you to everyone for attending. As I mentioned, we will have a recording of today's webinar, so we'll be sure to share that with you in the coming days, which you can also share with others at your club who might find the information valuable. Again, if you have any questions, you can get in touch with the Resilient Clubs Support Program team at the same email address your invitation to this webinar came from. So that's resilientclubs@sustainablebrisbane.com.au. So thanks everyone for joining, and we look forward to chatting with you again soon.
Thanks everyone, and thanks Jess. Have a lovely evening.
Good night.
Cheers. Bye guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.